It is the oldest story in the book. Darkness versus the light.
Hey, what is up, guys? It's me, SR Mowry, here for the next episode of the Servants of Judgment book club. You can see I'm a bit farther than we are in the book club, but that's okay. Been making progress reading my own book. It's always nice to see, always nice to experience. Today, we're going to start with Chapter 9, The Queen of Owls, which is, I think, I mean, pretty blunt, honest. Like, I think that the Virgin Elves has to be the civilization that I am most proud of. The intricacy of owls and how it all fits together with the branches and the execution methods and everything. It just works so perfectly, and I love it so much. At this point, the heroes they meet the queen, and they discuss, why are you here? What's the dealio? Things do not go well. Ruth has to kind of drop some threats. The queen's pretty erratic and hard to reason with. Valandra's doing what she can to try to prevent them from being executed on the spot. And the result is that they are under house arrest under the charge of Valandra's care, and so Valandra takes them back home, and we find out that Valandra lives with her sister, and her sister has taken over her father, who is now deceased, previous occupation, which is taking care of this library, which is where they live. And we also meet her sister Lyra. Valandra and Lyra are both sisters. Yes, their last name is, my favorite hockey player's last name. They're supposed to have Russian accents. It fits. It just works. So they're in the library, and I spend quite a bit of time kind of building up the hominess of their home and kind of the culture of the Evergreen Island culture in this chapter. And again, I just feel really quite proud of it. The way the owls, each branch of the government, which again, branch owls, it just all ties together so well. The talons, which just makes sense that you would call the knight, the King's Guard, or the Queen's Guard, you would call them the talon, because that's the weapon of an owl. It all ties together so well, and I really love it. But you kind of get to see, Valandra still kind of wrestling with that feeling of duty versus, what's right. She wants to be loyal to Evergreen, what's best for Evergreen, but also what's best and what's the right thing to do overall. Her sister is very different. Lyra is this very innocent bookworm who has never taken a life, who has never served in military service. And you kind of see this interesting dichotomy between the two sisters. Lyra comes prepared to help, really by any means necessary, and Valandra has to peace out and go to the military council to try to plead the case so that they won't be executed, because she understands if they execute the Prince of Grendel, yes, most certainly, King Tellenwell, Ruth and Talia's father, would wage war. He would. And Valandra understands that, so she's going to go try to talk some sense into her queen. The military council and then the court of owls, or I can't remember, council of owls, or I can't remember what exactly they call it, but it's kind of like their congress. Valandra's branch, the military council, is kind of like if there was a Congress, but specifically for the military, which is occupied by the Wood Elves in this society, which Wood Elves have red, orange hair. High Elves have blonde hair, although some Wood Elves might have dark hair. Um, but yeah, so one of my favorite moments is just kind of like Valandra lying down by the fireplace with her, horned tiger companion Redwind, which we also meet in this chapter, and the way that her hair kind of like falls into like the fur of Redwind. I just really love that moment. It was one of those moments where I think I really fell in love with the character of Valandra, just kind of like, this is an interesting character, that she has a pet horned tiger, and her sister is so different than her, and she's part of the military council. She's bound by duty, but moral obligation, and anyway, while she's gone, Lyra goes full bookworm mode, and they try to figure out what the weakness is for Moonra and the person who wields it, and that there is a weakness, that they kind of formulate a plan of how they're going to get this weapon of judgment from the Queen. It's quite the tall task. And I feel like it's kind of a creative, it's not an exposition dump because they're having dialogue about it, and some of the information is accurate, some of it isn't, so it's definitely not a dialogue dump. But it's really meant to kind of feel like them kind of puzzling it out, and much better than the last season of Stranger Things, I might add. Much more natural sounding. One thing I really try to do is have characters have unique voices, whereas like the last season of Stranger Things, I feel like almost any line of dialogue in those little group sessions could be said by any character, and that's usually a pretty good sign that the writing's not that great. So there's a lot of information given there, but as with most of my lore-heavy or mythology-heavy conversations, it's not like pertinent that you remember every name and thing that's dropped. It's lore building, but as with fantasy, you're not expected to know every little thing. Let's see. Valandra comes back, and they are basically sentenced to death except for Talia and Ruth, and they will be held in jail cells until that appointment can be made. Valandra tried, but she couldn't get it done. But the point is, like, they have a plan. It's just, now the pressure is on Lyra, this little innocent bookworm, to get that done, or for Narvin and them to escape, which is pretty unlikely when you see the jail cell or you read about the jail cell. Like, yeah, you're probably not going to, even if you get out, like, what are you going to do, sort of thing. Chapter 10, A Headless Reply. We start with Henry staring at a document. That's how it first starts. And we kind of see him and Lilith having a conversation here about, that he wanted to be, what he wanted to be versus what he had to be, the Stag of the South, and kind of his hopes and dreams and what he was hoping to be. And how also, as per usual in Henry conversations, how to handle the Indru problem. How far do we go to get this achieved? Clearly sending assassins isn't enough. And so then you have Advisor Sawyer volunteer himself, like, hey, Indru trusts me, send me, I can manipulate Indru on your behalf without him even realizing it. And I will say, maybe Advisor Sawyer is being genuine there. Maybe he's not. I will tell you, as soon as you think you have Advisor Sawyer figured out, you don't, and you probably never will. And that's kind of the point of the character. The next season we have Sir Torvus and Indru. So they're kind of like discussing like the merits of Indru as an advisor, Indru as a potential king, Sir Torvus as an advisor. They're discussing how they feel that the message to Henry will go, the headless reply. One of two in the chapter, I might add. They're also kind of just talking about what kind of a king Henry is. whether or not they fear him as a military commander. The conversation comes to a close after Sir Torvis and Andrew kind of discuss ethical questions. Torvis always wondering if Andrew's too callous and cold, and am I going to be able to keep this person in check? Then we switch to just Torvis's perspective, and he goes out into the rain, where he kind of waits to see if there's been a reply from the letter to the other northern barons. And I like the writing there. I feel like it is very, like the dialogue is very well. Anyway, second headless reply, the messenger comes back from Ravenspire with his head chopped off. And so obviously that sends the message of war. And so we kind of have this setup for conflict. Okay, Indru has made a claim to the Northern Throne as well as the throne of Hanor overall. He wants to lead the North against the South. And so the other barons are asked to reply, like, are you with us? Or are you going to be loyal to Henry, who hasn't really been treating the North as a whole very well? So, like, what are you going to do? And this is the reply of one of those barons. And so Indru has a difficult choice of, like, well, you can't be like Napoleon Bonaparte with the continental system and make a threat that you don't intend on actually following through on and succeeding in following through on. So Indru is like, this is a test. Like, the rest of the North is watching. Okay, someone stood up to him. Is he a competent leader? Can he take charge? Is he worth supporting? Should I even be afraid of this person? And so Indru sees this as a challenge to prove his mettle, prove his grit. Is he worth people's time? And that's kind of where the chapter comes to a close. So we have that first conversation where Henry sees his friend's head, returned to him. And obviously he's pretty distraught about it. I think I actually forgot to mention that when I was first going through it. But he gets the severed head of his friend Landon. And so they're discussing things, and they send Sawyer to the north. Then Torvis and Indru have a discussion, as usual, about moral ethics and how to be a leader and about how Henry is as a king. And then Torvis goes to see if any messages have come in from the proposition to the other northern lords. And of course it has, and it was rejected. Chapter 11 is a big chapter. The bravery of Lyra Svechnikov. And in this chapter, we're pretty much, I believe, with Lyra the whole time, if I'm not mistaken. And we really get a sense of who this person is. We get to see that she is absolutely adorable. She thinks that any problem can be solved with a good book. And she basically goes out and attempts to fulfill the plan that they had come up with by the fireplace earlier, but by herself. She goes and buys some lavender and talking to herself, thinking to herself the whole way, doubting herself, wondering if she can do it, wondering if she even really wants to go. Of course, she ends up deciding that she wants to, not necessarily because she wants to do the right thing, but also because we learn, her father passed away, but she wants to know why. And she's not entirely convinced that he's actually dead. She never saw the body, so we have her reminiscing about her and her father, a very touching memory. One of my favorite lines of the chapter is when Lyra is planning out, she's looking for books that could help, and she finds a book on wielding a mace, and she's like, well, all weapons are the same, so yeah, this will be helpful, even though I don't have a mace. And I think that just kind of tells a great deal about who this is, and she's a pretty hard character not to like, in my opinion. So she goes, and we do have a brief change of perspective to those in the jail cell, but it's very brief. And they're kind of discussing how Zipes has a crush on Lyra, but maybe Ruth has a crush on Lyra. That sounds really superficial and lame. It's more like Zipes is defending Lyra. Ruth makes an accusation about him thinking that Lyra is cute. And then Narbad kind of coming to Zipes' defense, well, we saw the way you were looking at Valandra. it's not like some kind of like weird gossip talk, but it is kind of a lighter moment. And we go back to Lyra after that, and her quest to reclaim or claim Moonra from the Queen of Evergreen. Lots of internal dialogue. Getting the flower, a single stem of lavender, but ended up buying the whole bouquet because, it'd be weird just to buy one. But, she doesn't need the money anyway because she's about to leave. She finally gets to the queen, and she kind of has to dance on her feet. Of course, she has weapons with her, and it's kind of mysterious how the talons don't catch it. But at any rate, she is able to get the lavender behind the queen's ear through flattery, and then the rest of the talons end up being drunk through this special alchemy concoction that she has come up with, and we get one of my favorite lines in the book. "Thanks to you, my queen and honorable knights," Lyra said as she placed the weapons around her shoulder. "None of you wants to tell anyone of this. It is an especially important secret. You'll remember me as a fat human named Carl who gave you such wondrous wine and flowers." I just think that line is really hysterical, and then later just made better by the queen saying, "Of course, it is the least we could do for you, Carl." I don't know. I've always found the name Carl to be quite humorous in the first place. But Lyra is successful and goes back, and we find that Narbed has gotten out of the prison, but Lyra's got his back. They get their equipment. They start out of Evergreen. And so we end that chapter with Lyra being like, "Okay, follow me to the sea," and that's that. That is the conclusion for this week's book club. Hang out with us next week.